I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. It was nice when we had PC meetings, we could do that twice, say the pledge twice. You don't get to do that every day. All right, this is the meeting of the Morrison County Board of Adjustment. The board is made up of citizens from the 5 commissioner districts of the county. The purpose of this board is to review the applications of property owners for relief from the strictest interpretation of the county ordinances. Our guidelines are established in state statutes, chapter 394.27, subsection 7. The decision made by this board is the result of whether or not a practical difficulty has been determined. If the board determines there is a practical difficulty, we then review the guidelines in the form of 6 criteria questions that are answered at the end of the applicant's request. A final decision is then made. Each request is evaluated on its own unique practical difficulty. Variances are granted to the land, not to the landowner. This board may, in addition, impose conditions in the granting of variances to ensure compliance. After your public hearing is complete, you may leave if you wish. Okay, the only item on the agenda, other than old business, et cetera, is Brian and Hillary Burns, 31595 Lowry Circle, Cushing, Minnesota. Application for a variance to allow for a septic to be within the road right-of-way located in Scandia Valley Township. If the applicants would come forward and pull up a chair in front here. And when you're comfortable, pull a microphone up to you and repeat your name for the record.
Good evening, Hillary Burns.
Brian Burns.
Thank you, welcome. On the screen, you'll see the staff report. Amy?
Yep, Mr. Chair. This is a variance request to place a septic system within the road right-of-way, excuse me, located in section 28 of Scandia Valley Township. The ordinance reference is section 1301.34, and that's concerning the setback of septic systems from township road right-of-way. Here's a plat map of Scandia Valley Township, and the red dot is the location of the parcel. And then here's the variance request received from the applicant. And here's an aerial photograph of the parcel. And then some oblique imagery. And then here are some site photos taken at the viewing on the 11th of February. Again, the property is in section 28 of Scandia Valley Township on Lake Alexander. The parcel is within the Elwood Acres subdivision. This subdivision was established in 1953. The lot is a non-conforming single lot size, which means it's less than 120 feet wide at the lake and less than 30,000 square feet in area. The lot is 100 feet wide and 12,197 square feet. On September 1st, 2020, a variance was granted to the property to construct a dwelling 20 feet from the township road right-of-way and maintain 31.6% impervious surface on the lot. And then here's a copy of those findings. Following the grant of the variance, the applicants applied for the land use permits for the dwelling and septic system. One of the submittals was the septic system design. And then here's the drawing that went with that. The county field appraiser viewed the property in December 2021 and concluded the construction of the new dwelling is 40% complete. During construction of the home, the septic installer was on site for installation of the septic system. He had concern that the septic system would not meet setback from the road right-of-way, and that, in fact, the septic would have to be placed within the road right-of-way. He stated that he designed the system using what he thought was a survey of the property, and at the time of design, there appeared to be room for the system. After learning this information, the applicant contacted the Land Services Department. Staff reviewed the language of the variance and the septic design and concluded it did not address an encroachment of the septic system into the setback from the road right-of-way, much less to be within the road right-of-way. The applicant is proposing to install a mound septic system, including a tank and drain field. The drain field absorption field would be within the township road right-of-way, 12 feet from the edge of the road. The toe of the landscaping of the mound would be 8 feet from the edge of the road. And then here is just a drawing or aerial photograph with the right-of-way turned on and then measurements from the edge of the road to get an idea of where that would be placed. A type 3 mound system is proposed because the system will be placed on previously disturbed soils. A variance is not needed for the type 3 system because the lot was created before the requirement for a type 1 system was adopted. The scope of the variance request is limited to placing the system within setback from the road right-of-way. The applicant attended a Scandia Valley Township meeting. Within their application, the applicant stated the township authorized the placement of the septic system in the road right-of-way. That letter came after your packet went out, so here is what came from the township. And I can certainly give you a chance to read that if you'd like now. Ready for me to move on?
Yes.
Okay. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is natural resources and open spaces, goal C2. Shoreline development, goal D1. The water plan goals and objectives is the surface water goal, objective B. Land use and development goal, objectives B and D. 125 notices were sent. 1 phone call was received prior to the public hearing. That was from Don Pilarski. He stated he is a neighboring lot owner, and he stated that he is opposed to the request. He stated he is the president of Circle Lane Conservancy that owns the outlot with the other 16 property owners across the street from the property. He stated the septic is closer to the wetland area and that it could contaminate this area, and that area does drain into Lake Alexander. He said the old home was large as well as the new home, and the old home used a holding tank, and he's questioning how they thought that a whole system would fit in the property with this size of home. And that was the only comment we received other than what we got from the township. And then here are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Amy. The applicants have anything to add to that? Give us a little history, background, how we got to where we are today, perhaps?
This process has been a learning experience for us. And certainly, if in hindsight, we would have come and asked for septic when we talked to all of you, or a few of you anyways, back in September of 2020. The plan that you have before you is the plan that we had from day one. Just a series of misunderstandings along the way led us to come back a second time. And so nothing has changed with our plans. As you can see in the way that we describe the project, our goals are the same. We think that they're in line with the use and ordinances, and the township was, I'll say, grateful and encouraged us to move septic from lakeside to roadside. Anything you want to add?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Marv and I were both
Yes.
there in 2020. I looked back at my packet of information from 2020 and looked at the slide, the proposal for the septic system, and it is in the same spot. I think maybe the confusion came in, maybe the same confusion that the septic installer had when he was reading it, it looked like it fit. The fine print there was hard to read, and it looked like it was farther away. I don't know if that's how you got to where you are now, or seemed to fit then, or nobody really measured?
No, I believe that we didn't realize that the septic also needed a variance to be in the road right of way. We knew it would be in the road right of
Oh,
way.
you did?
We didn't
Okay.
know that we needed, so it was our fault that we didn't ask for the variance at that time.
Okay. Any thoughts on that, Marv, or?
Mr. Chair, a couple things, questions I had, and one would being, part of the reason we granted the request was you had such a large impervious surface. I mean, concrete, it was just unbelievable, the amount of impervious surface. And you agreed to remove patios and pavers and whatever. Has any of this been done? Has all that, okay.
The patios, you could not see it when you were there because of the snow. We did not get the patios lakeside removed prior to snow falling in the fall. Our plan is, and we're engaged with a landscaper to go in and take care of that right away in the spring as soon as we have access to do
Okay.
so. So all of the commitments we've made on impervious surface, we're still right on track to deliver all of those.
So we will not have, or you will not have a change in impervious surface, what was first proposed?
Correct.
Okay.
And as you saw, the garage has been removed, and so removed that obstacle so close to the roadway as
And
well.
where the current septic system, where the new one is proposed, that was all concrete mounds and concrete driveway as well that have been removed prior to building the house. So that's been removed, as well as some concrete on the north side of the property for the
So
house.
my only response, and tonight was the first time we had heard the comments from Mr. Polarski. My only response to that would be the way that the property was situated, and you remember the concrete driveway, 2 concrete driveways, there was no green space whatsoever on 2/3 of the lot. All of that has been draining down into that wetland since we don't have all of the records on the house. Now we're gonna have quite a bit of green area, and now there's going to be a septic mound there. But we are gonna have the ability to retain that water and filter it through the land before it is running across the road into that wetland. So from my perspective, this is an improvement on what has happened previously.
As the board agreed before that part of it too, majority of that was flowing away from the lake down and getting filtered. So, yes, agree with that. I have nothing to add at this time here.
Yeah, just a little follow-up on that. Yeah, I can't remember exactly the lay of the road, but it does run across the road rather than down the road. Okay, so that slows it a bit too, and it's pretty heavily vegetated on the other side of the road, if I remember, or,
In that wetland area?
yeah,
Yes.
Yes,
treed and,
oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yes, very,
Okay.
actually, Amy's got it up now. So
Oh.
yes, you can see.
Yep, okay,
The way that that was constructed, what you don't see here is the slope, and it was a pretty significant slope. And the way the roof line was constructed, everything from within, let's say 15, 20 feet of that roof line, closest to the lake, was running down the hill, across the road into that
Sure.
wetland that Mr. Polarski's talking about,
And the new house is pitched differently.
the opposite way.
Yep. With
And
gutters proposed to keep
Yeah.
away from the lake.
yeah, the contours in this map help visualize that. Yeah, your sharp contours front to the lake and to the road. Do you have other plans for slowing it down, the flow of water, other than, the mound will be there, the vegetation will be there? Do you have gutters planned on the house, and how will they be directed away from the lake, I assume?
Yes.
And what area will they be directed into? Maybe on the map here, you could show us.
Yeah, so on this, we're looking at the house the long way, we're facing to the west. The pitch is going to be to the north and south. Gutters will capture there, and then it'll run it into rain garden or landscape areas to collect the water.
Okay, so below the mound system, you'll have a little catch area, I assume, or above it, or around it, or rain garden that you're talking about, catch area.
Yes, we will capture that water coming off of the gutters.
And you've got the 8 feet from the toe of the mound to the pavement, is that correct? Is that area usable for you to catch water too, or to slow it down, or
Yes.
that's the plan, or am I putting words in your mouth?
Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry.
this might help. This is, what I have on the screen now is the report from the shoreline specialist.
Great.
We did have a condition on the original variance that the shoreline specialist come out and actually look at the shoreline and the stormwater control. So these are his recommendations and conclusions from that. I believe the Burnses were provided with a copy of that. And so within this, he has recommended actions, and then he also has required actions. So the recommended actions talk about the shoreline and the adjacent slopes. And so I'll give you a moment to take a look at that and read that off your screen there.
I assume this was Galen that did this?
That's correct. Let me know when you want me to advance the.
I'm good.
Anybody want to see anything again, or? Let me know when you're done. You okay to go, Dave? Okay. Could we go back to that? Sorry.
That?
I was just going to ask, what were you planning to implement on that? The required, some of the recommendations?
I noticed one of the recommendations was a retaining wall. Is that
I don't think so.
after that?
Well,
Describe.
yeah, I
Oh,
didn't
it's
quite understand.
describing it, okay.
So all required actions,
Mm-hmm.
and then on the recommended, and I'm not remembering exactly which are the recommended.
Oh, I think one of them was the gutters.
Yep, the gutters,
Yeah.
And the trench probably is what you were probably.
Yep.
the trench system. I don't think he said anything about a retaining
Things
wall.
to
No,
consider
I'm sorry.
He
screening.
said things to consider screening on the
Yep.
property,
Okay.
would be,
Yeah.
would be to kind of,
Yeah, I don't know what is relevant to today's request, other than the fact that we know that where the sewer system's going to be and what it's going to look like. And this does affect that to a certain extent, and that is part of your water control. So I assume we could condition that area or not.
Well, the scope of the request is whether or not.
Right.
Whether or not there's a practical difficulty for placing a septic system within the road right-of-way. This, everything else has already been granted, it's a land use right you've given them. So it's really not the subject of discussion tonight, and you can't change it around.
Sure.
So really what you're looking at now is just the placement of that septic system within the road right-of-way, and that really is your scope. I think showing that they followed through on everything else, and that the stormwater will be addressed coming off the site as a whole is important to know, and I think that that's been buttoned up with what has already occurred with the last variance. But if you were to condition anything this time, it would be directly related to that septic system being within the road right-of-way. So pretty narrow scope for tonight.
Okay. But in light of tonight's application and the letter that you received from the neighbor across the road, you know that that's a point of great concern to them, to us, as it was to us when we granted the variance originally. And I think it would sure do you well to follow as much of those recommendations as you can, especially as far as stormwater crossing that road. Okay, one thought I have is, what are your alternatives? The neighbor mentioned holding tanks, you know. Obviously, where in your sewer system design, where the tanks are situated, that is out of the setback. And if you didn't add the drain field, you would meet setbacks. And therefore would not need a variance for that sewer system. Another thought, I know, I was always curious why you didn't just drive, well, too late now. Your house is well done. Why didn't you just drive straight into the garage rather than go up and around? You would have had plenty of room on that hillside also for a sewer system, which in hindsight, I don't know if that's something that would have, could have been done, but
On that one in
not an option anymore.
On that one in particular, the property line is close enough on that north side where I don't believe anything would fit, meet that
Sure.
setback from that property line.
Yeah, which is more palatable, a
Right.
setback to a side yard or a setback to a right-of-way. Yeah,
Correct.
okay, good point.
We chose the path that we did in consultation with Mike Altrichter, who is the excavator and is the septic designer and installer here. And so Mike, we really looked at the plan. He came out, and it was his idea to actually come in and tuck under garage to create that green space on the east side.
Okay. Thank you. And holding tanks versus a type 3 mound system?
Holding tanks are an option. I mean, we have holding tanks already on the west side of the house. Part of our desire is to move to a type 3. It makes the house more useful year-round. And so that, in consultation with Mike, was part of the reason why we went down this path.
The slide that has the signing off on responsibility for a type 3 system,
As far, say it again,
it's in I think it was figure 1 even.
figure one?
Yeah,
Oh, I did not upload.
the treatment agreement, yes.
Yep, let me see if I have that in the slides.
Yeah, if we don't have it, it's okay too.
Yeah,
But
I know what you're talking about. I didn't upload
the
all of
type
that
3
to
sewer,
the
it's right, it's in
PowerPoint.
your packet, the type 3 sewer treatment, obviously,
It's the
reading through that.
acknowledgement form, is that what you're talking about? Yes. Yep,
what a type 3 system is, the risks that are involved, and that the risks lie entirely with you. Generally, when we're on a variance about a sewer system, it's, is there if one fails, is there an alternative place for a second system to replace that? And I guess your alternative would be the holding tanks if this were to fail. So I guess we could answer that question positively, that you have a backup design. I'm sorry, I'm doing all the talking. Let the rest of the board ask questions. I think I've addressed the issues that I was concerned with. Probably answering the question whether you need a variance or not is up to our vote later and our discussion of the questions. Anybody else have any questions?
I don't really have a question, just observation, and when we were out there and did our site visit, yes, it looked like pretty much everything that you could see was tore out, so, other than the patio bricks that he was saying, because they're up on top out of the snow, but the way I look at it, you know, they have tanks on the lakeside, okay, so what's their other option? Either use them tanks, or put tanks on this side of the house, or do a type 3 system. If it was me, I wouldn't put tanks in because I got them on the other side of the house. So really our only option is either we leave it the way it is or you do type 3. Because no, if you gotta have tanks, you're not gonna move them. You just use the ones that are there, correct? I mean, so when you look at this, we're moving something away from the lakeside to get to the roadside. So to me, it's still just the option of either we agree that we're gonna do this, agree or not, of giving a variance for a type 3. That's just how I observe it. So,
Okay, any other thoughts?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Brent.
couple of questions concerning the existing holding tanks that are there. I think I heard read that they're currently capped.
They were capped when the excavation and the demolition of the prior house and excavation began. They were capped.
Okay, so they are existing there now, capped. However, what is the future plan? Should this variance go forward, what are the plans with the existing holding tanks that are on Lakeside? Are they to be removed, crushed, filled, capped, left capped? Oh, I guess I'm curious what happens to those.
I believe, and it's nothing that I've gotten in writing from Mr. Altrichter, I believe it's just to leave them capped as is. They were completely emptied before we started the project, and to leave those capped.
Generally, if you're going to properly abandon them, yes, you cap the flow, so nothing can flow in them. You pump everything out, and generally, they'll collapse them, and then they do an abandonment form when that's been completed. Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
The way your new home is situated, can you get flow to those existing tanks? I know generally people, design your home based on where your septic is going to be and you gravity flow to that. With the new home, could you get flow to the existing tanks, or would they have to be placed gradient?
I asked that question of Mike, and I don't recall what the answer was.
Okay.
I think it was, we'll cross that bridge if we need to.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious if it, because like I said, generally you gravity feed to the tank?
I'm not a sewer person, but I've not done enough with it. You can pump it to it.
You can, it's not awesome.
No, but I'm just saying, so.
So
yeah.
I was just curious if that had been taken into consideration with the design of the house, so.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mark.
So we had a fair amount of discussion about this the last time when you asked for the variance. And if my mind serves me correctly, that we talked about possibly removal of the tanks, and then after we were into a deep discussion, we thought chance of erosion to the lake would be more apt to happen, so we'd sooner just leave them the way they are. If you
You mean
remember
in
that?
place?
Leave them in place because of the fact where they were on the top of the hillside, and then if they removed them, if they had a heavy rain or whatever, you don't have sod or anything in place, and a good chance that there would be some erosion to the lake.
Yeah. They'll still have to be properly abandoned though, and so that'll have to be done, regardless. So we don't get to pick if they're gonna stay in place. We're gonna follow Minnesota rule, on proper abandonment, and generally they'll collapse them. They'll crush them or fill them in. So that will need to be done.
Okay, but when we were talking about possibly digging them out, and that we'd
Yeah,
sooner
that
not.
doesn't have to happen. You can, yeah.
Thank you.
Mr.
So
Chairman?
basically, hold on, it would be changed from impervious surface now to something that is pervious, if it were collapsed and filled in and have a gravel surface. Not very, because you'd have rocks down below or concrete down below.
It's pervious right now. It's turf over the top of the holding tanks.
Like a couple inches, or
I don't know.
it doesn't absorb a lot of water, but, okay, go ahead, Dave.
I think we're going a little too far here on this. I think our only consideration is that setback. I think it's a properly designed septic system, and that to take into account one complaining person, anything we do here, we could find somebody that might disagree with it, and to put too much weight into, there's no scientific basis in his complaint from what I can read. It's just something he doesn't like. And so I think we're going a little bit too far. I think we should only be considering what the effect of the setback is from the road.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm concerned about I think it was a good question asking about what's going to happen to the old system. And I think Amy reassured us that that's going to be done according to the standards it'll have to be inspected and done properly. Won't be used again, and will become a better part of the landscape. Okay. I do think, though, that the neighbor has a concern. The right-of-way is kind of public. Locating a type 3 system which can fail, you see the agreement you have to sign. It's on you, nobody else. It's not on us. If we grant the variance, it's not on the septic designer, it's on you. And you've got protocols in place to, it needs to be inspected every 2 years, I think. You are to inspect places where it could be starting to fail. I think you've got inspection tubes that you need to inspect regularly. I assume there's an alarm system on it. Most of these systems will have that. It's not without, it's not a type 1 system. It is a system that can fail, and it is in a public right-of-way. So I think a neighbor right across the road, if I were right across the road, I would be concerned for the wetland, for the groundwater. And it is also, part of the ordinance that we have to consider. Does it meet the intent and purpose of the ordinance? Having a type 3 system.
Mr. Chair,
close
and I'll just note, you're not considering a variance for a type 3 system.
Correct.
So they don't need a variance to install a type 3 system. It's just the setback, so.
But they have options. They have,
Yeah, so that's something, but you're not looking at a variance on whether or not you'll allow a type 3, and I know that comes before you every once in a while, but this one doesn't need that variance. It's just the setback of the system.
but as the neighbor pointed out, maybe a holding tank is more palatable, more secure than a type 3 system. I think that was the gist of his argument and the placement of the system and the request for the variance. So, all right, we can agree or disagree. Other thoughts? Time for public input? Before that, do applicants have anything to add to our discussion? Okay. All right, I'll open it up for public input. Is there any public input for or against this? We've had the township letter and the letter from the neighbor. Any other public input? I have to ask 3 times. Any other public input? Having no public input, we'll close the public input part of the meeting for the night. Did I? Yes. At the beginning of the meeting, I did discuss the viewing, and who was at the viewing? Sharon? Was that in the minutes? Okay. On February 11th, Friday at 1 p.m., Clint, Dave Brucher, and Brent, and Sharon were there for the viewing. And for the record also, myself and Marv, we had viewed the property back in August of 20. So, just for the record. Okay, before we go to the questions, any other thoughts? Are we ready for the questions?
I guess I had one further question on this mound layout. I'm trying to get the design right here. It's a 12 by 31 base, is that right? And then there'll be downslopes around that. And we're looking at a 10-foot, is that right? A 10-foot variance wave here?
Nope. So the the requirement is that the soil absorption area, the business part of the, not the landscaping, not the toll,
Okay.
but the business part of the mound needs to be 10 feet from the road right-of-way. This will be in the road right-of-way. It will be 8 feet from the edge of the road. So there will be no setback from the road right-of-way. In fact, it'll be in the right-of-way. And because the township has jurisdiction there, they needed to seek permission to place anything in their road right-of-way before they could come and ask for the variance. So this is really asking for 0 setback from the road, from the right-of-way, because it's going to be in it.
Okay, but there would have been a 10-foot setback for the county.
Correct.
So that's the wave, I guess. That's what I was looking at, is we would be looking at waiving that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, so if you look at this figure 4 here, here's the road right-of-way. The landscaping of the mound will be 8 feet, will encroach 4 feet into this, and then, so they, in the letter from the township, the soil absorption area will be 12 feet, and the landscaping can't be closer than 8 feet from the edge of the road. But this kind of runs at a curve, so you're gonna have portions of it in there, so.
Further and some less.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments? Ready for the questions? Okay, the criteria questions are, will be up on the screen. And I will find my list here shortly. I always bury it somewhere. I swore I buried it over here. It can only be in so many places.
What are you looking for?
Oh, my questions, my list of questions and voting sheet.
Your voting sheet?
Voting sheet, right?
Do you have, Sharon, do you have another voting sheet?
Oh, I've got it here. Here it is, right in front of me. Okay. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? We'll start out with Marv.
I believe it is, and what they're, on their original project, having lowered their impervious surface and following the shoreline specialist's recommendations and doing everything in good faith, and having the township okay with this here just concludes that it is in harmony with the intent of Morrison County Land Use Ordinance.
Okay, anybody else? Brent?
I think the ordinance allows for septic systems. what we're really concerned about here is the area of which to place it on a uniquely configured lot. And variances are allowed by the ordinance as well, so I think that's exactly what we're here doing tonight.
Okay. Okay, and myself, I think because of the fact that there will be new holding tanks put in, and with a mound, in junction with a mound system, and the old system will be properly disposed of and turned into pervious surface, or more pervious surface, that some of the intents of the ordinance and comprehensive plan are met there. Protection of groundwater, surface water, with the plans that they have for runoff through that area, and more vegetation, much more than before, water holding areas, and with that in mind, and the fact that if the mound system fails, you have a backup system basically already in place, which you probably could even add to. Then I think it meets the purpose and intent of the ordinance and comprehensive plan as Amy listed in the ordinances and objectives that were listed in the staff report. Okay, Clint or Dave?
No, I have nothing else to add. I agree with what was stated previously.
Neither do I. I think you've all stated your points very clearly, all three of you. Thank you.
Okay, number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the land use ordinance? Brent, you're first.
I think the homeowner's looking to establish a Tier 3 septic system mound for their cabin. I think that's reasonable. They're abandoning the existing system, which I'm not sure what the age of that is, but regardless of that, it looks like to me that some impervious surface has been removed from that area where the new mound Tier 3 system is going, and it's reasonable.
Okay. And myself, I'd just like to add that, it's a reasonable use according to the township. Type 3 is allowed. That's the only choice they actually have, whether they meet the setbacks or not, because of the surface or the place where the disturbed soil that they have to place it in. A type 3 is probably more reasonable than a holding tank as long as it works. It's a reasonable use with risk, which I guess even a type 1 system, there is some risk, not much, but some. Okay, anybody else have anything to add? Clint?
The only thing I'd add is kind of agree with what you said, Dave. We got a small building envelope on this property. They've already reduced their prior project by 593 square feet. So they're trying to fit in this sewer system in a small area. And then with the township willing to do away with that setback, it just makes it real reasonable. And then to go maybe a little farther to comment on what the one person we had that did the phone call in and worrying about his wetland. Great feedback from that person. Anytime we can move a sewer system from the lake to the non-lake side is great. And one thing we have to remember too is it's still that wetland, we got to worry about that also, but I think these sewer systems are designed, it's not going to, I don't think, affect it where it's going to go under the road and get to the wetland. It's still got some distance to it. So I think it is reasonable to void this setback to make it fit on this property.
Anybody else have anything to add? Dave, Marv?
Well, I couldn't add any more than what Clint already covered everything very well. I agree with what he said. Thank you.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, thanks, everyone. Number 3, will the issuance of variance maintain the essential character of the locality? My turn to go first. That's probably the one that I'm most concerned with. It's going to be difficult to answer that positively. A mound system within the road right-of-way should not become part of the essential character of a neighborhood, and isn't. It's hard to disguise, hard to drive by and say, oh, that's a nicely landscaped thing. It's a mound system, and it's in the right-of-way. That's my thoughts on that. I haven't decided how I'll answer this question yet.
I'll help you.
Go ahead.
I'll help you with that one. Okay, yeah, there's different ways that you can dress these things up to look palatable. But I look at it differently from maintaining the essential character to the localities. If you look down the street, there's a couple garages, for sure one, that I guarantee is just as close as what the sewer's gonna be. And when you look at it from a road maintenance standpoint, it's a lot safer on township equipment and the people to maybe hit a little bit of dirt from a sewer mound than it is to hit a garage. Like 2 houses over, I believe, is the one garage, and we never measured it, but by looking at it, I'll guarantee it's as close or closer to the road right away as this mound system. And I think once this is all done, and if they get their flower garden or whatever they're doing for their water catchment, I think it'll just tie into the landscape, and you're not really going to notice it, because it's kind of a hilly neighborhood too, so you're going to see other valleys and different landscapes of the yards that are close. So that's my interpretation of that question.
Okay, thanks, Clint. Yeah, it does remind me of the drive down that road now. It's been a while since I've been there. Go ahead. Anybody else have anything to add?
No, I agree with Clint. Again, he came up with some good points. About the essential character, I did pay attention to it when I drove back and forth, and I think that, a nicely shaped mound with some grass or whatever you decide to do out there, I think it really will fit the character of the neighborhood better than the garage down the road or a couple of the buildings that are right in the right-of-way there. So I think it'll be an improvement.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, the way I look at this, if this would be a flat piece of property and that mound system would be there, that'd stand out like a sore thumb. But because it's so hilly, yeah, I think it'll blend in there. Obviously, you're not going to see it from the lakeside. Roadside you will, but because of that hill, it almost be part of the landscape, I think, because that will make it fit in.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Nothing further.
One thought, maybe related, maybe not. Mow the lawn a little longer there. Don't shave it close. Number 4, nothing else to add to number 3. Number 4 is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property. Clint?
How come I always get this one first?
Yeah. I'll let you start first.
Yeah, I guess. Help me out. Okay. I think with the small building envelope, if we look at, where was it I seen? We only have a 1,253 square foot building envelope to meet all setbacks, okay? And they came for a variance to build this home. So when you put that in there, and if you really, I know we're looking back a little bit, but if you look back, they already reduced the size of the house and garage by 593 square feet. So to put a proper sewer system in, and we can argue if type 3 is allowed, so it's proper. So we to get a proper sewer system in and appreciate that it's away from the lakeside. I think the practical difficulty here is just such a small building envelope to meet setbacks. And the practical difficulty on this one was it's too close to the road, but the township's already waiving that. So that's my definition, I guess. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but that's how I see it.
Okay. Dave, you're next if you want to.
Well, I have nothing further to add.
Okay.
Thank you.
Marv, Brent?
Well, something I will piggyback on this is, the original plan looked like, they designed the buildings and everything and had this septic system designed. And because of the print that he was using wasn't correct, it really messed things up. And what do you do? Thankfully, the township went along with this. And here it is a small piece of property and it is very unique. And they're trying to make it work to the best of their ability.
Okay. Go ahead, Brent.
Again, just continuing on with what everybody else has said. Yes, you have the approval of the township to encroach into their right-of-way, but in order to get to that part of it, you have to have the variance of the county on that setback. And so I think that is the practical difficulty. The practical difficulty is getting to the area that's being allowed by the township to use, and in order to close that gap, that's the practical difficulty, and that's why we're here.
This all sounds good to me. I have nothing to add. Ready for the next question? Okay, number 5. Is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowner? Dave, your turn first.
I can't say I have nothing further to add, can I? I would say that the need for the variance was, it's unique to the property. The only way it wouldn't have been created by the landowner would have been to never have developed it. So at this point, they have, it's not because of their actions.
Okay. Yeah, anybody else have anything to add to that? Marv?
Well, this lot was established before all the setbacks. And that is what this all started back then. As you look around a good share of that lake, we have a considerable amount of lots that were developed before all these setbacks were in place. And so that's what created this, and how do you work within them, that envelope, and they're trying to do their best with that.
Okay. Go ahead.
Just one thing to add. I agree with Marv said. And then one thing to look at, maybe everything on this piece of property ain't hitting all the standards that we want, okay? But when you look at it, they've made a great effort. They reduced the size of their dwelling. They reduced their impervious surface. So they're trying to do right by this property, even though they have a piece of property that, like Marv stated, it just was a small lot that was designed, and then with the setbacks coming in, it just leaves such a small building imprint. And they're trying to do their best at using that small window that they have to build. And it might not hit every factor that we need, but they're doing a diligent try to do it. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay. Go ahead, Brent.
I think when you look at things that are created by other than the landowner, prior landowners, obviously 1953, these lots are developed in that general area, and the size of those lots are established at that point, and so everything has been crunched since then. I think there's some fault here with the septic designer when it was first looked at, and thought it would go in and meet everything, and it doesn't. And now we find out we were still trying to place it in that area. So there's some fault in actions by somebody that designs and who you trust and rely on that's going to do a septic design for you that doesn't now work. So you have to come back here before us to get a variance for this. The available space to put it in on that lot is very limited. But maybe the best choice is where it is. So there are some other things here besides the landowner or prior landowners at play.
Yeah, when I read the question, actions other than the landowner or prior landowners, Well, there was an action taken in September of 2020, and that was a variance granted by the Board of Adjustment. I was not in favor of that at the time, because, you know, it was a slate wiped clean, and all the setbacks could have been met, all, you know, the impervious, all of the impervious surface could have been met. But I do like the process we went through at that we were able to, you were proposing 40% impervious surface, got it down to 31 or something. This may not be related to, to the variance request today, but it is. It's how we got here today. And, you know, and I think you're going to follow recommendations that are in place here. So I'm comfortable with that variance, but it was our action that I think brought you here today, not just your own. Okay. Anybody have anything to add to 5? Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv, you get to go first again.
I believe their due diligence has proven that it's much more than economic considerations. They're trying to do what's right, and I think we've all seen enough of these that they would have just put in a septic and don't worry about it. Every bit of this, they're following their best ability. The shoreline specialists, they're doing much more than looking at economic considerations. They're looking at what they can do to improve this piece of property, what they can do to lower the erosion going to the lake and then across the road. So it's much more than just economics.
Okay. Anybody have anything to add? You got enough on that question?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Marv. We're good to go? Okay, ready to vote on the questions. Question number 1, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
Number 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Land Use Ordinance? Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And Marv?
Yes.
Number 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? Myself, the answer is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
And Brent?
Yes.
Number 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Clint?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Number 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Dave Brucher?
Yes.
Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
Number 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? Marv?
Yes.
Brent?
Yes.
Myself is yes. Clint?
Yes.
And Dave?
Yes.
All the questions have been answered in the affirmative. Is there a motion to accept this variance request?
Mr. Chair, I'd make that motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to second this.
Thank you, Mark. Motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. I'll take a roll call. Marv?
Aye.
Brent?
Aye.
Myself, aye. Clint?
Aye.
And Dave Brucher.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Do good. There's a lot of eyes on you here. You're right next to the road.
Thank you very much.
And how's it going?
Congratulations.
This must be tough, getting this all done with materials being available and
Thank you.
and
Thanks to
labor
Amy
and.
and Sharon. They've been very helpful, so.
And
Sharon's
keep harmony
been
in the neighborhood. Just keep doing your best like that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
You ripped my paper, you guys.
It's one of those sharp things. It's just like a needle there.
That's a pretty hard signature, Dave.
Yes.
Hawaii, I got all rested up. Can you make do with that?
Yes.
Okay, next on the agenda is approval of the January 25, 2022 meeting minutes. I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, motion is made to accept as presented. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, new business, old business?
The only thing is, we do not have a March, Sharon, what's the date?
One?
March 1st. There is no agenda for March 1st, so we will not have a meeting. But we do already have an agenda for March 15th. So just know that we will have a meeting on the 15th.
Okay, and then
BOA or so far?
Just BOA so far, yes.
do we have March 20, is there 3 in March or just?
I believe there's, I don't have the schedule in front of me. I can
Thought
pull
I
it.
seen that there was.
Pull it up. I won't
March is the
know.
Yeah, I thought there was. I think the 20,
We won't know because the
Okay.
deadline,
but the
the application.
29th, if we do have one,
Okay.
I cannot attend that
Okay.
one.
Yeah, so so we won't know for a little bit because the deadline is still
You can
out.
push that off for a couple of weeks. So that
And we do have, the deadline for the March 15th meeting is tomorrow, and so far we just have one item. So we still could get, I'm not aware of anything that's coming in though. We usually have a, kind of an idea because of the dirt meetings. So I think it'll be just the one on the, and it's a variance. So we still will not have a planning commission meeting, so that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Sure, it'll be when I'm gone.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks. Is there a motion to adjourn? Or is there any other business?
I'll make a motion adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries.
All right.
We're adjourned at 7:02 PM. Oh, in the meeting minutes, there was something I was.
Gary,